Welcome back to another episode of 40 Facts About the 40K Universe. I am your host, Gershwan, and you are watching OneMindSyndicate. Today we continue talking about the Death Korps of Krieg as we get into the Death Korps of Krieg versus Xenos. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. We post Warhammer 40K content every single day. If you have any suggestions, comment down below. And if you enjoy our content, thank our patrons on Patreon. Link in the description if you want to support us on Patreon. But with that said, let's get into 40 facts on the Death Korps of Krieg versus Xenos. The soldiers of Krieg are most famous for never flinching, even in the face of sudden death, and they see their deaths in war as a collective penance for the heresy of their ancestors so many years before. To learn more about their origins, check out our 40 facts on the origins of the Death Korps of Krieg. They are a dedicated trench and siege warfare force, and perform best during wars of attrition. The Death Korps of Krieg regiments routinely volunteer for tours of service in the most dangerous war zones in the Imperial, which means that they have earned a fierce reputation across the galaxy. The Death Korps of Krieg is more reliable to hold their ground, and when advancing, prefer a massive offensive over an extended front with a rolling barrage of artillery support. Many Krieg regiments are adept raiders of entrenched positions should a mass offensive be impractical or require the softening up of an enemy position before any such offensive can take place. The fact that the Death Korps of Krieg are known for their unconditional loyalty and ruthlessness in prosecuting their wars mainly comes from the atomic purging that the 33rd Krieg Infantry, under the command of Colonel Churton, inflicted on their own planet during the Krieg Civil War, an event that the Death Korps of Krieg is still particularly proud of. Death Korps of Krieg regiments are always raised on Krieg with great frequency. The form and composition of these regiments will differ according to the edicts of the Departamento Militarum and the strategic needs of the moment. Infantry regiments, mechanized infantry, and armored regiments are all known, but by far the most common use of Krieg manpower is a siege regiment. The Death Korps' philosophy of total war reaches its ultimate expression with this regiment. But what makes the Death Korps of Krieg regiments distinct is not their war gear, but their mentality. Regardless of their assigned role, they retain the Death Korps' strength of discipline, endurance, expertise in trench warfare, and most notably, their tolerance for high attrition rates and environmental hazardous war zones. During the Third War for Armageddon, the regiments of the Death Korps of Krieg were deployed on Hive Tartarus, which was beset on all sides by great waves of Orks pouring out of the rocks they had crashed into the surface of the planet, to the north of the Hive cities. The regiments of the Death Korps were stationed in a vast network of trenches, blocking the Ork advance to Hive Tartarus. They also made excellent progress in their efforts to reach the rock itself, having already earned a fearsome reputation with the Orks in the sector. These grim soldiers seemed to be determined to take down the Ork strongholds by themselves. However, without adequate reinforcements by the Adeptus Titanicus, the Death Korps of Krieg's regiments looked to be fighting a futile and costly war. Wearing their dark greatcoats and trademark gas masks, their sinister appearance reflected their uncompromising nature. The Death Korps soldiers did not fear dying and were more than willing to sacrifice their own lives for the greater good of the Corps. The first attack on Tartarus was led by the Ork Blackskull tribe in an overwhelming force. The 14th Jopal Indentured Squadron mounted a fierce resistance, but the regiment's allied Hive militia were routed and abandoned the factory complex to the Greenskins. Soon its small arms workshops were producing ammunition for Slugga and Shudas. The main Ork offensive against Hive Tartarus was then launched by Morfang's big mob of Gargants. Breaking through the front of the Astra Militarum's position, they stormed into Tartarus, pursued by a battle group of Titans from the Legio Metallica, who engaged them before they could overwhelm the beleaguered Imperial defenders. Mobs of Morfang boys swarmed over Klane's stronghold in the Gargant's wake, but were pinned down by mortars and heavy bolter of the Death Korps of Krieg. Morfang's Gargants were making short work of the Legio Metallica's Reaver-class Titans, but the odds were even by the fire of the Ordinatus Golgotha from its eyrie on the Hive City Spire shuttle pad. 3 Gargants were destroyed before Morfang withdrew his machines. The Legio Metallica could not pursue, and so reinforced the Jopal line. The Death Korps of Krieg regiments counterattacked, unleashing time-mortared barrages that pinned the Orks down, while Krieg infantry and armored units poured deep into the Ork lines. Once in place, the Death Korps redirected their mortar batteries, herding the Orks together. Well supplied by Hive Tartarus's munition factories, the Death Korps regiments fired non-stop. Disjointed and unable to act coherently, Morfang's boys were completely wiped out. Briefly, it seemed as if the Morfang's Gargants would be trapped as the gap closed, but the Red Wheels raced to their aid and held long enough for the Morfang's machines to escape. With Ork reserves fully committed, the Space Wolves of Harold Deathwolf's great company seized the opportunity to lead a breakout from Hemlock Cordon. The vanguard entered Tartarus after a 4 solar day march. The siege was declared over. In another part of the galaxy, multiple Death Korps of Krieg regiments were on board the Memento Mori after engaging in the DAS campaign, when they were diverted to respond to an emergency assistant request by the world of Hieronymus Theta. A young world, Hieronymus Theta, had been preserved for its entire existence from a rampage of war, and was thus ill-prepared when its mutant population emerged from the deeps of its mines to ravage the lower levels of the principal hive city of Hieronymus City. The 42nd, 81st, 103rd, and 186th Death Korps Infantry Regiments were still inbound when it was revealed that the world of Hieronymus Theta had in fact been established on a dormant Necron tomb world that was slowly awakening. With 4 regiments of the best fighters the Imperial Guard had to offer inbound, authorities tasked the Krieg regiments to cordon off the city and destroy the Necron menace that lay below. The cordon was quickly established, trapping millions of civilians inside Hieronymus City, and at the mercy of the Necrons. Convinced that despite the Necrons' self-repair protocols, the Death Korps would win in a classic war of attrition, the 81st and the 42nd Regiments ended up suffering heavy losses, although they still succeeded in holding the line against the overgrowing Necron forces. Losses on the security perimeter were filled by local Planetary Defense Force troops, trained and equipped under the orders of the Death Korps' Watchmaster, whose harsh training regime was the cause of many desertions and subsequent executions. While the Death Korps' commitment could not be questioned, their methods in dealing with their allies gradually envenomed the situation, culminating in the summary execution of Hieronymus Theta's planetary governor and general of the Planetary Defense Force by the 186th Regiment's colonel for having tried to parley with the Necrons. Thanks to the insight of Commissar Kostlin, attached to the same regiment, a daring raid was mounted against the city's main genitorium, as it was believed that the Necrons were using it to aid in the awakening of their tomb complex. Though the raid was a failure, the attack revealed the location of the Necron Central Command Nexus. The Krieg regiments then converged on it in hopes of annihilating the Nexus with atomic devices, penetrating in full force into Hieronymus City for the first time. The Krieg regiments were slowed down by guerrilla actions of the local population that had turned traitorous and begun venerating the Necrons as iron gods. It was during this parley with one of these groups that the valiant Commissar Kostlin, who had survived the raid, was shot. This caused a long enough delay for the Necrons to notice this incursion, and with the loss of nearly all of its heavy artillery forces, the Death Korps regiments withdrew and abandoned the planet to the hands of its new owners. The Death Korps of Krieg would get another shot at destroying Xenos during the Tartarus campaign, an Imperial military campaign fought by the 4,621st Imperial Guard Army and elements of the Adeptus Astartes to reclaim the arid Imperial mining world of Taros from the Tau Empire and its crude and Guevesa allies of the Taros Planetary Defense Force. Elements from the 19th Krieg Armored Regiment, under the command of Colonel Weidmark, were to take part later in the campaign, as they were unavailable for the initial assault, having found an STC containing the last season of Game of Thrones, thus being severely upset. To make matters worse, the campaign was ultimately unsuccessful for the Imperial forces due to high amounts of casualties, and Taros remained in the possession of the Tau Empire, who renamed it Tros. And those were 40 facts on the Death Korps of Krieg. If you guys enjoyed this video, thank our patrons on Patreon. It's because of them that we can create these videos. Link in the description if you want to support. It's $1 a month. And if you can't support us on Patreon, we understand. Simply by liking, commenting, and sharing these videos, it helps out the channel. We use the money from Patreon to do our giveaways, our subscriber appreciation giveaways, which we're going to announce the winner for right now. So the winner of the Imperial Guard starter set from last week was this guy. All you have to do is get in contact with us either on Facebook or Instagram or YouTube, I guess. Well, actually, I don't think you can private message us on YouTube anymore. I think YouTube changed something or another. So just try to look for us on Facebook, or you could even email us at OneMindSyndicate1, the number 1, @gmail.com. and then we will ship this awesome prize to you. For all those that participated and did not win, don't worry, we have another giveaway coming tomorrow. So stay tuned for that. If not tomorrow, then Saturday, if this goes out on Thursday. But yeah, just stay tuned. And again, thank our patrons on Patreon. It's because of them that we can do this kind of stuff. And yeah, I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. This was Gershwin with OneMindSyndicate signing out.
Always used to put my freedom first in any situation.